You're listening to
The Bart Factor
with your host, Bart Robley.
Hello, everybody. This is Bart Robley, your host. Welcome to my podcast, The Bart Factor. I have not recorded a podcast in a little while, and I'm like everybody else. I have the most lame excuse in the world. I've been busy, but I really have been busy. The band's been on the road a lot this year, and I've got a ton of drum students, and so life's been pretty nuts. But I'm back at it, and here we are today, and I've got one of the greatest drummers in Orange County sitting across from me right now, and I'm really honored to have him here, my buddy Isaac Sanchez. Isaac, how the heck are you, bro?
Better now that I'm in the Bart cave. How's that for alliteration from an English teacher? I've been looking forward to this, man. I know we've been working on this for a little bit, and that is the best excuse in the world to hear from you that you've been busy, man. I'm happy to hear that. So I'm just glad we're here now.
Hey, man, this is great. This is going to be a fun afternoon and everything. So Isaac and I met a couple years ago, and Isaac is the main drummer over at Eastside Christian Church, and we met through our mutual friend Justin Joknelis.
Yeah,
amazing guitar player, singer. You know,
he's great,
dude. He's phenomenal. He makes his own guitars. He's just and super cool dude.
Yeah, yep.
And he introduced us, and I had, for some reason, like every time I would go, you weren't playing. There was somebody else playing. And I was like, and he's like, yeah, you know, Isaac. And I'm like, I hadn't seen him, or I don't know who he is. So the first time I went and saw Isaac play, I was like, oh man, this cat can play, man. Grooves were thick, and it was just great, man.
Awesome. Well, listen, I scrolled through my Facebook messages and realized that it was the Christmas show of 2013.
Was it that long ago?
Yes, that's why I was surprised, because I was thinking, how long has it been?
Yeah.
I scrolled through, and I remember, and I went back and said that was it, because we exchanged messages. We met backstage, and I remember Justin texted me, "Hey, Bart's here, and would you like to meet him?" I said, "I'd love to meet him." So that was, and I went back, and it was 2013. I remember because the next day we exchanged some messages afterwards. So yeah, man, it's been fantastic.
I said, let's do a podcast, and it took from
No, that didn't take that. That's where our amazing relationship started. But yeah, no, and so it's cool, man. It's cool to know that we're still in contact. And the nutty thing was to find out that I could have walked here.
Right.
5 minutes. I drove because I'm going to take off from here.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, when I found out, man, Bart's down the street.
Yeah.
And maybe we can talk a little bit more of how I've taken advantage of that to find out what. Yeah. Because I knew right away I wanted to take advantage of the amazing teaching that you do, and I have.
Oh, thanks. We've played in here a few times.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. Well, the neat thing was, I'm gonna go for you for a little bit here. Is I remember it was so cool because we sat down and had breakfast one morning at Kimmy's right down the street, and you said, "Hey man, let's just go to your place," because I was telling you about my little spot there, what I'm trying to do with some recording in my space. You went there, checked it out, and just you're highly encouraging, man. That's why I just knew I need to get to know Bart. I need to hang out and know Bart, because you just right away on two aspects. You were just very encouraging about my space, saying, "Dude, you can do this. This is
you got a great space, man."
Well, there was that, but then the deeper part, man, the teaching part was you took my Ted Reed book. And just
that
like
day?
On the spot on that day, because I told you, we talked about the teaching.
Because
I knew that I got the recording stuff I'm trying to do there. You were very encouraging on that end.
Right.
But then we talked a little bit about the teaching part. And so you saw some of the books I had, and there was a Ted Reed book. Man, you worked me through. It was Ted Reed or Syncopation.
Ted Reed's Syncopation.
Yeah, the Syncopation book.
Yeah.
What's there's a gray book and then the blue book.
Well, the gray book is George Lawrence Stone's Stick Control.
That one.
Written in 1935.
Yep.
And then the blue one is Ted Reed's book, Syncopation. And I'm not going to say what date it was written because I'll get it wrong.
No, well, what you got right is when you worked me through that, just a couple of exercises, I was like, man, it opened my eyes to that. So that's when I knew, man, teaching is an art, teaching is a science even. And I've been here a couple times where you've very sensei-like, I told you, here's the problem right here. And you've just kind of walked around the room talking me through some exercises and what to do, what not to do, and got me over these humps. So that's I've known that I wanted this relationship for that. So when the patient needs help, you can come back to the doctor.
Oh man, that's so
been very cool, Bart. So
awesome.
I love the fact that you even wanted to have me here to chit chat. But besides that, it's just been a cool relationship. That means a lot to me.
That likewise, man. It has been very cool. And the thing about the teaching thing, I remember going over to your house that day. Honestly, I mean, I don't remember what we played. I just remember seeing your studio and stuff. And to me, the reason that the reason that I teach and the reason that I love teaching so much is twofold. Really, I've had some incredible drum teachers over the years, and I learned so much from them, and they were encouraging to me that, hey, you could do this, and then they would encourage you, but then they'd put you through the meat grinder, and so, when you're young, you don't really realize that that's kind of what you need, a drum lesson. When you go to a drum lesson, it's not about, hanging out and jamming. It's about learning something.
Right.
And I remember one time when I was studying with Ralph Humphrey, for instance, on that point, we're working on something. Oh, you know what we were working on? I remember we're working on flam accents.
Okay.
And he just looks right at me and he goes, well, the reasons your flams suck. And I was like, whoa, straight up no chaser, man. So, I think you kind of go into drum lessons to get that. And it's important to me because the way that, the way that I grew up and the fact that I can even, do this is just awesome. So I love sharing what little bit I have about it. There's so many great drummers out there. But anyway, this is about you, man. This is so let's get started with this. I want to ask you again, having watched you play numerous times and heard you play, and the way you approach is so deep and stuff. First of all, let's just start. How did you get started drumming? How did you start out drumming and doing this whole thing?
I come from a family of 5. There's 5 of us siblings. My older brother Larry played drums, and it started in church.
Okay.
I grew up in a Pentecostal church. My dad was a pastor, and I didn't realize just how, on the musical side of it, how deeply beneficial that was till high school. And so what it was, my brother Larry was playing drums at our little church in San Jacinto, California. We lived in Hemet for about a year, then moved into San Jacinto. But we were going to this. My dad was pastoring this little church there.
Okay.
And my brother Larry was playing drums, and he was a great drummer. And at some point, my dad moved him to lead services, to lead worship. Well, that opened up the drum spot. Well, I'm a twin brother. I'm a twin. My brother Trinidad's out in Nashville. He's a bass player, which has been a real cool thing for that rhythm section thing. Yeah. We grew up playing together in church. Well, when we started, we were both...
Man, drummer and bass, but what?
That's
My
right.
eyes are deceived. Do you guys look exactly like?
The baby pictures, yes. Now you'd kind of, if he was in the room and he walked out and I walked in, you'd think, hey, how'd you shave so quickly? But otherwise, if we were both in the room, you'd see it right away.
Right on.
But,
sorry to be interrupted.
No.
I would just like to see that.
He's a great guy, great bass player, and he's got a studio out in Nashville right now with his family. But we both jumped on. So about 11 years old, we both jumped on the drum seat. And we're just making, poor folks in that congregation, we're just making a bunch of noise, and they're trying to learn because we didn't. And then Larry, helped us out a little bit.
Right.
But we're learning in that environment, and know anything about a Pentecostal church, it's alive and wild, and, gospel music, and there's a full band, organ, piano, the whole thing, bass guitar if you have it all. But when we moved from San Jacinto to Hemet, moved into Orange County area, and went to junior high, Brookers Junior High. There wasn't any music, or we didn't get involved with music. I don't remember what, but we were always playing in church.
Right.
And we were always playing in church every single Sunday, my brother and I. Every single Sunday since about 1980, maybe 82.
Wow.
And even midweek. So, one of the best piece of advice for anyone up and coming in music and any instrument, just play a lot and play with people. Well, we had that built in.
And you were playing in front of people.
Yes, Bart. That's exactly right.
Because that's one thing I think a lot of people, as a side note, a lot of students want to wait till they get it perfect to get out in front of people.
Yeah.
And you can't do that.
Well, they needed a drummer, so Trini and I were there making noise. And So, you're always learning, always learning, always learning. And anything we're hearing in music outside, we try to apply it into the services, like, hey, let's do this break, let's do that, whatever. So that was a cool thing I remember, is that we're always trying to apply what we were hearing outside into that music that we were doing.
And were you, through that, were you learning like a musical education, say, like were you learning to read and learning to transcribe, and were you reading transcriptions, or what was happening there?
That's where the lesson came in high school. Okay. So I'm playing pretty well, and then we go to high school, freshman in high school, Fullerton High School, and we audition for the jazz band. Trini gets in. I don't remember the details about Trini getting in, because I remember we both were not reading. That was one thing about church musicians many times. Great feel, but they're not readers.
Not readers.
That's right. And so for the most part, well, that's where that came up at the audition. So I had a senior at Fullerton High School that I was auditioning up against, and then there was me. And I remember our band teacher, Greg Hackey, so he runs the auditions. I don't make it. He makes it, for the sole purpose that he knew when to start and stop with the band.
Right.
And I did not.
Yeah.
I would so once I knew what the feel was, it's a rock thing, it's this thing, whatever, I played it the best I knew how to play at that point. Okay?
Right.
I was not the stuff, but I knew how to play drums at that point with a solid feel. And he made it clear to us, you've got a great feel, but we need to get you up to speed on reading.
Right.
So I spent the year working that. And here's the interesting thing: high school drum charts, they assume that you know nothing, so they ink in every single thing. You've seen everything. Note. Well, yeah. I was dumb enough to follow every bit of it, to go home and bar by bar.
Yeah.
Well, what that was doing for me was really, really helping me understand the reading,
right,
and all the notes, the map, the codas, signs, all that kind of stuff, right, as he was helping us through that. And I made it in the next year. And played through the jazz band in high school. Well, I went to Fullerton College right after that, because I knew they had an amazing program under Jim Linehan, and Alan Carter was the percussion teacher at the time. And
was Matt Johnson there then?
He wasn't there then.
Oh, okay, so it was a while ago.
It was. This was. I graduated high school. Here we go. Ding ding ding. Get your calculators out. I was. I graduated in '88. So
then you graduated after me.
Yeah. Here we go.
Don't get your calculators out. I'm not saying nothing, man.
So what was really interesting is when I got to Fullerton College, it changed, man. The charts might have been 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pages,
right,
but it was just slash marks, time,
yeah,
couple of eighths notes or whatever. So I hit with the trumpets, and I thought, okay, the expectation has flipped now. The assumption was, you should know how to play and how to read and get around this chart. Mm-hmm. And whatever that feel says out there, is it a samba, is it a rock, is it a swing, 3/4 ballad, whatever it is,
right,
we assume you know that. Now follow the chart, don't get lost, and then play your thing until we get to these little breaks or these hits with the band.
Hits, right.
And so that's where my nose stuck in reading in high school paid off.
Right.
And a buddy of mine, Sean Norris, it's been great to reconnect with him on Facebook, out in LA. He's got a studio. I remember Sean, he's a great drummer and now a producer and everything else. But I remember he told me, man, don't read note by note. It's just like reading. At some point, all these notes right here, these figures.
Yeah.
You're gonna look at them and they're gonna make sense.
You see it. The way I equate it is like looking at letters. When you look at a measure of music, you look at it as a whole. Yeah. You don't look at it as individual letters. You look at it as a word.
Well, that didn't resonate with me then at first. Because there's just some great musicians there. But you're exactly right. Now as an English teacher, mm-hmm. When you just kind of syllable by syllable trying to teach someone to read, afterwards you just say the word cat, not cat.
Right.
You just say it,
Right.
And so that analogy totally resonates with me and started to resonate with me as soon as I got past that hump that Sean was telling me. You're going to see these notes and they're going to make sense to you.
Right.
So I was at Fullerton College, and that's where, my reading in terms of stylistically, I started building on my style now, mm-hmm. the discipline. Jim was a workhorse, and just some other great musicians around you, drummers and others that were ready to take your spot,
Well, I think, what I always talk about with music is music, again, when you get back to the lesson thing, we're talking about that, you're always kind of putting yourself through the fire.
Yeah.
And it's music is very much like athletics in that if you're going to play and you're going to be in groups, whether it's, your own personal band or a college band or a high school band, you're going to be around people that, they want to do the same thing. So you're always going to be around great players.
Yeah.
So, you're always going to be going through the fire, and you're always going to try to be getting better because you don't want to lose your gig.
Yeah, that's right.
You don't want to lose your gig. And the reading thing, I bet, would probably help you in also in like recording stuff.
Totally.
I mean,
yeah.
Just understanding, not just phrasing, but understanding, okay, it's a 16-bar turnaround or whatever.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, I know just enough guitar and just enough barely piano, or if I sat with the music, I'd find the chords or whatever. So I'm not even bragging on that. Yeah. The only thing I'm saying is I remember my brother Trinidad used to tour manage David Benoit, the jazz pianist.
Oh, wow.
And so he was schlepping gear around, moving cases around for him on tour and whatnot. And I remember at one session, it was Mad Hatter Studios out in L.A., Eric Marienthal was doing a session, and Dave was there to do some piano parts. Well, J.R. Robinson's on drums, so he shows up after. Yeah, and he was so cool. He let me sit right in the room. Like, you want earphones? No, I just want to sit right here. He was totally cool about that. But once we were in the control room after tracking some stuff, we just got to chatting, and he told me, I play keys too, and so he was telling me part of my reading isn't just counting bars and looking at figures. I'm looking at the chords also. Now, for him, way more than me, he was saying...
This is JR.
JR was saying, I can see the chords. I see where it's going because I know chord structure.
Right.
And I know if we're going to an uplifting part chord-wise, or if it's a minor, or we're going to go somewhere else, whatever. And I've never forgotten that. So even though I couldn't tell you anything about chord progressions or whatnot, the way it does help me is I can see in a song where there's eight bar progression, and I can see it somewhere else in a section and realize that's that same feel. Now, am I going to go to snare or side click? But it's that same section now.
Right.
Or where it just changes, to obviously stuff is marked off as a bridge or whatnot, or
Correct.
chorus and all that verses. That's all there. So you could just follow the map, obviously.
Right.
But the added layer for me was seeing these chord progressions and knowing where the song is going. And on that side of it too. And so, it was very, very interesting to hear, from another drummer, there's another layer to the just reading the ink sometimes. If you know more about the tune or whatever, that's helpful. Of course, there's some people that even say, hey, if you even know if it's a lyrical song, if you know the lyrics of the song, you can add these layers to how much you get involved as a drummer in tracking it or playing it or whatnot. But yeah, so the reading totally has helped me with that in my own studio. But
and I think, and to touch on this, what you were just talking about, it's something that it's almost become a cliche when people talk about this, but it's not. It's so true and so important to all young players out there. The most important thing on the stage is something a lot of people forget about. They'll think, well, gosh, is it the drummer? It's the most important thing on the stage. No, I mean, when you're playing the drums, I mean, you're basically leading the band. You're telling the band where to go, and you're setting up figures, and like you were talking about the eighth notes, let's say on the jazz chart. You're hitting with the trumpets, bow, and you're letting them know where to go. So you're leading the band. Is it the bass player? Is it the piano player? Is it the singer? No, the most important thing on the stage is the song. Yeah. That's the most important thing. And playing for the song, it has nothing to do with one individual. Nothing to do with one individual. It has to do with the song itself and understanding form and structure and putting those things together. And the fact that you can look at a chart and see the chords, like you're talking about. Okay, this phrase, it's a reoccurring theme throughout the song, and here's how I serve the song. Yeah. Right. That's so huge.
Yeah, it's a key thing, man, because it only takes a couple times of getting in the way where you realize how crucial it is. Like,
Yeah.
okay, this is like, just like you said, it's a band thing. It is a song, and how do you serve that?
Yeah.
Anything, and that's a massive discipline. It's a massive, as you
completely.
well know.
Yeah.
And
I'll say this too, and I tell students this all the time, and when I say this, I'm pointing at myself because been there, done that. The person in a band that's usually the most guilty of overplaying, it's the drummer.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody wants, okay, here comes, they don't think of a drum fill as a setup. They think of it as, I'm going to be, we're playing Tom Sawyer, and that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Except for in that song.
Exactly.
And so learning, exactly, you said it correct, having the discipline to not do that.
Yeah.
Having the discipline to, hey, if this song calls for a 4 on the floor and I'm holding it together and I'm not stepping on the bass player, I'm not stepping on the soloist, and I'm definitely at a place where the singer who is telling the story can sing the song and convey the song, then I'm doing my job right.
Yeah. You know where that really came to light for me, Bart, was for a time later on in as an adult, I was starting to lead worship at a church. And so now, I was leading the band, and I had a young drummer come in, teenage kid, great drummer technically. I mean, I can tell that he had been listening to Dave Weckl. Great drummer. And as I was leading worship with the vocalists and whatnot, getting through at rehearsals, I just kind of hear these fills or a groove that was really busy. And I thought, okay, I need to let him know that it goes counter to what he's thinking, and that is the more simple you can play in this context and just be pocket for the band and fill into the next section or whatever. Yeah. You would be, amazing to us to do that, and that actually what you're doing right now is not impressing at all. Right. And it was a great conversation. His dad was a musician, so his dad knew where I was coming from and helped along with that conversation. But I brought it back to myself as a musician learning. It was like, that's what that sounds like when I'm behind someone else. Yeah. And I'm worried about what people think of me and my playing other than the song. Right. And it was that, another one of the lessons I've never forgotten. And it came from this young man. Yeah. And I thought, no doubt he's great and he's going to be amazing. But right now there was a lesson for him and there was a lesson for me. Right. And so now, whenever I'm playing behind anyone, but particularly in a worship setting, I go back to that. It's like, man, this is not the time to distract anything, or bring any attention to me, because there's a whole other focus here. And it was helpful to be up front for a little bit, right, to hear how important that was behind me in terms of the drumming spot, and anyone for that matter. But yeah, drummers, too many times we look for those little fill marks in the music and say, yes, we're already, kind of rubbing our hands together 8 bars ahead. It
says fill or set up. It doesn't say solo.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
This is not where we're going to, the drums are going to levitate above the stage and fire's going to shoot out from the bottom. Although that would be cool.
It would be really cool, man.
But, ain't going to happen. Not during this song. Yeah. Okay, so that's awesome. So that answered the first couple of questions I had for you. Yep. But I guess the next one would be then who were your early influences growing up in church, and who are the guys that you listened to go, okay, I can fit that into worship, or this is a worship drummer or a worship band that I like. What were your early influences?
Growing up in church, in a Pentecostal church, we were not allowed to listen to secular music.
I know that feeling. I wasn't Pentecostal, but my mom was a Jehovah's Witness.
Close enough.
Dude.
In terms of that discipline, what you can or can't do.
Yep.
That is exactly the same. And so, fortunately, we came across, there's a band called the Sweet Comfort Band, and they started in 1972. And the interesting thing, besides the music being absolutely fantastic, they were trailblazers of their time in the worship industry, when a lot of it was kind of folk, singer-songwriter, guitar, acoustic guitar stuff. Right. It was the Christian music. Right. They started this thing with a full band, and they were excellent musicians. That was the key. They were amazing musicians. Now, this is they started in 1972-ish with their first album.
Okay. And what were they called again? Sorry.
Sweet Comfort Band.
Sweet Comfort Band.
Yeah. And so there's a funny story many years later watching them when I was still young, where they told a story that, they had to change their name first they just said Sweet Comfort, and it was on the side of their truck, with all the gear. They said they had to change it to Sweet Comfort Band because people thought they were like a mattress company. so,
you got any chairs in there for sale, man?
So Sweet Comfort Band. And the thing that I know
awesome.
Exactly the importance of a name,
right?
So I remember one of the things that they were like a magnet, besides their musicianship, that my brother and I were really attracted to was the bass player and the drummer were brothers, the Thompson brothers.
There you go, yeah.
And they were great, and their pocket together was absolutely tight in all their grooves. I mean, funky, rock, rhythm and blues. They went everywhere. As a matter of fact, the keyboardist, vocalist, Brian Duncan, was very soulful. He came from a Pentecostal background, but he was very, very soulful. So there were always those elements, and then there was the rock element, just really, really cool stuff.
Right.
So that was the band that I started. I remember Trini and I really started wanting to emulate, and the drummer who I really wanted to emulate. And anytime Sweet Comfort, the band came out with another album, we were just waiting in anticipation. They used to have these gospel nights at Disneyland. I think it's called Night of Joy. And so we'd go check out bands there. And so that was one band that thoroughly mesmerized us. And Trini and I really, really worked hard on emulating those tunes in our playing, and those musicians, those two guys. Rick Thompson's a drummer, and Kevin, who's passed away a few years ago, is a bass player. And these guys reunited. They've reunited out a couple times, and it's been great. And a little side note, a buddy of mine, Gucci Barra, who a great drummer who I share space with.
Great name.
Gucci, exactly.
Gucci. That's like just a great name.
Gucci actually texts for the drummer Jamie. I don't remember Jamie's last name, for Tears for Fears right now. So he stays busy playing and teching stuff. And Gooch has been playing drums for Brian Duncan on his own career, because once the band split up, Brian took his own career, and Randy Thomas, the guitar player, took his own career with a band called Allies. But I got to play with Brian. So Gooch couldn't make a gig because he was on tour. And he asked me if I wanted to sit in and cover a gig. So
cool.
It was kind of back to the reading thing. I remember working out. It was something like 15 to 20 tunes that Bart, if I did not know how to transcribe and write music, whether it was a Nashville number system on some of the more simple ones or notation, transcription, I just couldn't do that. And I had to say no. It was crunch time thing. They didn't know, hey, he may need a drummer, he may not. They're not sure if they're going to go with my recommendation. Gooch is telling me, So by the time they did, I latched on to that transcribing, reading skills. So, but I got to play with Brian. So it was a really neat moment to be playing and look up and say, man, that's the guy that I grew up listening to. And with his band playing to or whatnot.
That's cool.
It was really cool. So that was the Sweet Comfort Band. And the other one was an artist who recently passed away within 5-6 years, I believe, is Andre Crouch. It was Andre Crouch and the Disciples.
Yeah.
And the drummer there, hugely influential to a lot of drummers, back when I was growing up, is Bill Maxwell.
Yes.
And Bill Maxwell played with him, Disciples. He's a producer, engineer, and whatnot. Very heavy in the music industry, as I came to know later on. And then as I listened a lot and absolutely tried to emulate Bill Maxwell with his stuff, when Bill popped up with a band called Koinonia, which is well worth looking up. And is that and as a side note, just before I forget the question, did that also influence like you as wanting to record and produce and do all that stuff too? I mean, because you realize that it's not just about playing drums. In my case, it's about teaching and doing this sort of stuff, but you want to do productions and stuff like that. Bart, as far as I can remember, I loved playing live and still do, but I had always was mesmerized by the studio. Yeah. By that, by that, the awe of that in my mind, walking in, it was like a laboratory. Yeah. That's a good way to put it. Yeah. And so the guys in Koinonia are some of LA's top. They've since disbanded. They've played for many years together, and if you look them up, and I encourage any of your listeners to look up Koinonia. It's Koinonio.
Okay.
Yeah, Koinonia. And but Bill Maxwell's playing drums and Alex Acuna is on percussion.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and it just blows up from there.
Yeah.
Abraham Laboriel is on bass, Hadley Hawkins-Smith on keys, Harlan Rogers on guitar, Harlan Rogers on keys.
They probably got a groove or two in that band.
They're working on it, man. And then Justo Almario on sax. So that, as I recall, that's the core.
Yeah.
And they recorded a lot of albums. And now they had disbanded, but they kind of get together here and there, a quartet of them in a band called Open Hands. So they're still hustling, still doing stuff. But those were, so Sweet Comfort, band, Andre Crouch and Disciples, those, and then Koinonia.
Okay.
Those were some core ones that I recall that I was always trying to emulate them. But then, yes, that they were two things, influencing kind of what I was doing in my church music, and then also that aura of the studio. This is all coming out of a studio.
Right.
And that studio drumming. Now, of course, all along, when I told you starting off, I didn't grow up. I remember listening to one of your podcasts, and man, it was a good an educational slap on the hand for me, because you mentioned on one of the podcasts with you and your guests that I didn't grow up reading liner notes, because we couldn't go out and buy albums,
buy records. Yeah.
So who was producing? So
Yeah.
I grew up listening to all these songs on the radio, because I was going to find a way to hear music, even if the music wasn't allowed in the house.
Right.
So as I grew up, I'd hear on the radio, oh, that tune. There's that tune. I remember that tune from my childhood. I remember the groove on that tune.
Yeah.
All this stuff. And then it's like, oh, man, there's that kind of shuffle thing. Oh, that's that band Toto. That's that drummer Jeff Porcaro. That didn't come till later for me.
Right.
Because
and you weren't
Absolutely. So there's a part of me that just tells, man, I don't care. I'm not going to get too preachy here, but I will a little bit, to parents of aspiring musicians, maybe of the religious band or whatever. It's like, man, if that kid is, that young person is wanting to learn music, the best thing is for them to have role models.
Yeah.
And guard. I'm not parents just asking them to let anything in the house. We have to guard that. You and I know there's either messages or whatever that we, kids shouldn't be listening to till they're old enough to deal with that stuff. But to not allow them to listen to the core music. So then I'm listening to all these bands, not knowing that all those Christian musicians and and these bands I'm listening to, they were influenced by secular musicians.
Oh,
so
yeah,
I was getting
completely.
like a second layer, you know what I mean? Second source instead of the initial source. So I'm telling you on that podcast, I still find myself learning, okay, so who was the drummer for this band, for that names. I know the grooves in most cases, or the songs and whatnot, and know that I love the feel and I love the song but these bands on the Christian side of it were the names that I know,
and they were influenced by other.
Exactly.
Well, and that's actually a whole podcast in and of itself, because like I said, growing up, my mom was a Jehovah's Witness, and she did what she felt was right. But I went through the same thing where it was, I would have records in the house and I could listen to them, and then someone would come up and, no, you got to get rid of those.
Wow,
and that's a whole story.
Yeah,
But here I want to back up for just a second, because you brought something up that that I've talked about in other podcasts, but I really want to. This is a question that popped up in my head just a second ago as a side one. Yeah, you said that your twin brother is a bass player, and you guys play together, and we all know, all the drummers out there, the rhythm section relationship is so important. Yeah. And the bass player that I work with in Sam Morrison band, Greg Kasparian, in my opinion, is not only one of the greatest bass players I've ever played with, but he's just a great human. He's a dear, dear man. And he and I played together for so long that he always tells me, he goes, I can read your mind, and we always bounce stuff off each other. We have that, we kind of, like I was saying about the drum lesson relationship. I'm like, hey, all the time, hey, how's that groove feel? Is this okay? Is the pocket cool for you? And we're always bouncing ideas off of each other. And then our piano player, Walt Thompson, comes in, and it's just this big glue. Yeah. And we're really tight, and I really appreciate that. Now, I can only imagine, as somebody that's not just your brother growing up, but your twin brother, there has to be some sort of magic when the two of you play together that isn't there with other bass players, even like if the other bass player is just a shredder and killing it, and you guys are locking, there's got to be some sort of chemistry between you and your brother that's almost indescribable. Talk to me about that, because I bet that's cool.
You are exactly right. When Trini and I started playing together in church, there were certain grooves or breaks that we knew that just with a look, we knew where we were headed.
Right.
So that is, so we're not so much twins to where if you hit me, he feels out in Nashville.
Right.
That's a myth with us.
But I know some people, like I've known a few people in my life that were twins.
Yeah.
And you just can't, it's weird, because it's like almost like it's one brain.
Well, I'll tell you this. I remember one time we must have been 6, 7, young enough to where I don't know how it worked out, but one of us stayed at one of my uncle's house and aunt's house, and the other stayed home. They had to pick us up and take us back because we were so distraught and sad that we were separated. But in playing, you're exactly right. Trini and I were so tight that way, and I'm telling you, man. In our church, as time went on and more musicians started coming to the church, it was just the way things need to go. We need to give up our space to other folks so that they can be using their gift in the church also.
Right.
And that was tough to do because we weren't going to be playing together every Sunday, but that was the core place that we were working together.
Right.
But it grew, man. So what we would listen to outside, we would say, hey, let's try this one break on that one song in church. And we tried it, and either it would work or not. Run it through a couple of weekends and see if it would stick, or not. But it was very much that way. And particularly, again, when we grew up listening to the Sweet Comfort Band, because of the Thompson brothers, Trini and I were so stuck to hitting that right that we would carry that into other tunes, almost to a fault. Like, okay, what's the? I mean, we both know, like with the bass, kick drum, bass player relationship. Okay, what's the groove for the section? Sometimes it doesn't have to be that exact, but in other times it is. And so Trini and I, almost to a fault, would hit that. But that was a benefit to us being really, really, really tight together.
I can imagine.
Yep. And then in high school so we were playing in church, then we're playing jazz band.
Right.
And then we got to play together a little bit at Fullerton College. So there was a time, Bart, where
that's cool, man. That's really cool.
It was very fun. And, he's been in Nashville. It's been maybe since about 92, 93 that we've not been playing consistently. You know, life happens, marriage happens, moving happens, or whatever. And I remember we got together at his studio in Nashville to start working on some stuff, and we had to work a little bit to get back there. Yes, and we just didn't have the time, but I'm looking forward to working on some projects with him. And here's the interesting thing, though. On my studio, we just were tracking some stuff for a buddy of ours in New Zealand, and it's all been piecing together. So someone's recording in New Zealand, someone out in Hollywood, me, Trini in Nashville, and putting it all together. And it's been very interesting to where Trini and I have had to put on our big ears because we're not in the same room,
right?
To kind of listen to where's he headed. Sometimes I'll set up the groove first, and then he'll go along with that,
right?
And if there's any input, we're a phone call, email away. But it's been really neat to be tracking with him, independently. But the big ears are there, and I love hearing him, there, knowing that he's in my cans.
And you can feel that.
Oh
too,
yeah,
I'm sure.
it's great. Yeah. It's been really, really good.
I'm sure. So now so how then? Here's my next question, as far as like being a worship drummer.
Yeah.
How from where you were as a kid, to what you do now?
Yeah.
But what's changed over the years? How has things changed? Over the years of being a worship drummer.
Yep. It's been very interesting. When now, I want to correct something real quick. When we first went to Eastside in 2007, we found it there, and we just loved the teaching that we were under there and the worship that was happening there. We thought, we loved this, had a great children's ministry for our growing children, and so all that matched. So we were there and loved the gospel style worship that was happening there at the time, and got involved right away and was one of the main drummers there. And that continued till about 3-4 years ago, still on the roster there.
Okay.
The good news is, in a situation like that, when you don't find yourself playing there every weekend is that means there's other drummers.
Right.
That's great for a large church like that.
There's a lot of great players there, man.
Yeah,
There's
yes.
so many great players there. Every time I go, somebody's just up there killing it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And so that's the good news of that. And so I'm 100% because I've led worship before, like I was saying earlier. And I know it's one of the battles that churches have is trying to find solid talent in the church.
Right.
Now they could be guys like me that have a full-time job but still do this and try to aspire to a very solid level. Or you have some weekend warriors that are still struggling with the reading, their time or whatever, but they want to help. And there's this delicate balance of we can hire someone and bring them in or use the church member. And in my mind, and I know this is the thing for many worship leaders and even pastors, is we can't have a distraction on stage.
Right.
That's a key for any spot, So when I grew up, that wasn't as high value. You can imagine the distraction Trini and I were when we were first playing.
Yeah, completely.
Okay, so
yeah.
Thank God for them that they allowed that because we needed a place to play, you know, and that was that. Now, because at Eastside and churches like Eastside was such a high level of production, that can't be tolerated. You can't have someone missing the cues or missing the mark or not being able to play to a click because that's one of the changes. You got your in-ears, you have tracks playing, you have cues in your tracks, you're playing to a click. And you got to know, when you're on, and sometimes you're running the computer, and other times someone else is. So it just depends on your responsibility for that. But that's been the crucial thing is that you do have to come in with a solid skill set to perform in that. And that's been one of the big changes because at Eastside, as you well know, the main campus is you have a 40-foot LED screen behind you, and that's going all over the world, streaming and being recorded. There's 4 cameras in the room and one roaming one, and all that's being fed live, and it's going to be archived. And so you have to have your stuff together, and that's been one of the things that's been very helpful to me. That knowing that, because I just I'm gonna have to show this to you later. There's a video that I did that really came from a place to where, okay, you're not going to find my name on any major record label, on any books or anything like that. And I've been hustling for this time of playing drums. But all that time of doing that in the setting, Bart, I realized there's a skill set that I've come up with.
There has to be.
Yeah. And the thing is, and this is for anyone out there that's hustling and you're kind of in that same place, that don't do whatever you want, but if you continue to think I'm aspiring to be on the cover of this magazine or to play for this artist, I put out a video. My cousin helped me produce a video when I realized, what, at Eastside, swap out the worship leader and put some big artist named singer.
Thank you.
And it's the same production value, if not better. And my preparation part, as you well know, because you do this with your bands, it's the same, man.
Oh, yeah.
So, quite frankly, I had to put a check on myself and say, if I'm trying to find my validation from who's in front of the mic or who the lead artist is, if it's an instrumentalist or whatever, game over, man.
Right.
Because I have to, like you were talking about earlier, it's the song, it's a song, it's a song. It's that performance, it's that moment, regardless who it is up front. Right. And so at Eastside, the production value is very high to where I realized, what, I put a video together. It's just called How to Prepare for a High Profile Gig. The high profile had nothing to do with the artist. Right. It had to do with
the gig.
The gig, Bart. Right. That's right.
And, on two notes, and this has always been, and again, just my outlook on it. I remember when I, if you go back in some of my YouTube videos, not just the podcast, but in the videos where I interviewed Stevie D. Yeah. And Stevie's a great guy, an amazing guy. Plays for everybody in the world, Crosby, Stills and Nash, David Gilmour, I mean Don Felder, all these amazing players, and that's his big thing. He's like, you don't go up there and you pitch a no-hitter every night from the time you walk on till the time you walk off. You go up there and you do your job. And the way I've always, and again, I haven't always accomplished it.
Yeah.
But the way that I've always looked at my playing with the band is, okay, if I'm playing at East Side in the Commons,
Yeah.
okay,
Right.
or if I'm playing at a bar in Anaheim and there's 5 people and a bartender, or I'm playing on a stage in front of 7,000 people, I'm going to give you the same Bart Robley.
Yeah.
I'm not going to, oh, well, there's only 4 people here tonight, so I'm just going to phone it in.
Yeah.
You get up there, it's like Buddy Rich used to say, when you come to play, come to play.
Yeah.
And you've got to, I completely agree. You have to, I don't care what you're doing, you have to do your job. Just do your job, do your gig. Come up and be prepared.
Yeah.
And treat it with respect
Mm-hmm.
and treat the songs with respect.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
Yeah.
That's what it has to be about.
Yeah. And that's one of the things, well, let me just say this real quick before it fades from my mind.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of my introductions to you before we actually met. I remember Justin at East Side, the Friday Night of Hope, the Celebrate Recovery gig we would fill in for.
Mm-hmm.
I remember her telling me, this guy Bart that comes in and fills in, and he told me, this guy comes with like the music written out and everything, and it's all like, what? It's like a Friday, and I do the same thing. I was very intrigued because he was blown away by how prepared you're going in for that, and I thought that's what it was. Another thing, I got to meet this guy. We're not typically in the same room when we're working,
right?
But it was a reminder for me because I tend to be sure I do that. To write out the notes on whatever charts are given to us, if they're charted, or chart my own out or whatnot. Because just to show and be able to nail the gig and focus on the music and, have your guide right there. But I remember that. It's like Justin was telling me, this guy comes in, he's got all this, his music laid out. And that was that notion, that same thing. It's Friday night. It's a small group of people, but you're bringing your A game because you got called to play. And you said yes, and I say yes to those gigs.
Yep.
And so bring it. Don't show up and say, well, this is a volunteer thing, or I'm only getting $50 for this. If you said yes and I say yes, then game on. The same standards apply or whatnot.
Completely.
Yeah, at that point, it's just, what are my responsibilities? Just my sticks? Is everything else there? Or laptop or in-ears or whatever, But that's been one of the big things that has changed from, the early church, from your original question, down to churches like Eastside. And I had a huge benefit before Eastside, just to kind of say this real quick on that same vein. I was playing for about 6-7 years at Harvest Church in Riverside, Greg Laurie's church. And the worship leader there, Hans Ives, is still there. When I was playing out there, this may be about 10, 11, 12 years ago, and I was with them for about 6 to 8 years at their campus there, at some of their satellite campuses. And then when they opened up their campus in Irvine, Hans said, hey, man, I know that's closer to you, because the calls were very early Sunday in Riverside. I'd be leaving here if I was doing percussion at like 5:30 in the morning to get out there to set up. Yeah, and then so I loved it because Hans had a high standard of musicianship, still does, and of worship, the expectation of the band and for the congregation. So he's my standard as a worship leader.
Does he do stuff with Disney?
Not that I don't think so. I've
for
never.
some reason, that name I don't know why, but for some reason I'm thinking Disney.
Yeah, Hans Ives at Harvest Christian Fellowship in Riverside is still doing, and he's got an amazing. Reminds me, a lot about that teaching part. He grows musicians out of their church. They're a wonderful example. Mm-hmm. He absolutely has an amazing thing going that I wish more churches would look at to grow your own musicians, because once they started going from the main campus to all these satellite campuses, when I would go to these other ones, even the weakest link on stage that, at a rented, cafeteria hall at their satellite church at some elementary school, even the weakest link on that stage was still solid.
Oh, yeah.
And so that was a standard that he held there. And so I've always taken that, to any other church that I've played at, any other gig, because it applied to everything else. But
I really do. I don't want to hammer the point, but to young players out there that hear this, or to me, there's no such thing. And you know where I mean, there's so many influences. I could sit here all night or all day and talk about, well, I learned that from this guy and this guy and this one I did. But really the simplest one for me, and I think about it, like, you know, every time I'm on stage and maybe having like, God, I'm having a rough time today, or I'm tired, or I'm not feeling well. I always think about what Tommy Aldridge said. And Tommy Aldridge, one of my favorite drummers in the world, he says, every time you sit down to play like it's the last time you get to do it. Man, that's great. And that's huge motivation because you know, I mean, what if it is your last time? What if this is the last time you get to do it? Yep. You don't want your last performance to be remembered as the one that just, wow, that was horrible.
Exactly. You know? What was wrong with him?
Yeah. Exactly. And so
that's a great mindset.
Yeah, and you know, and again, when I say all that stuff, you know, I'm sure that any musician out there will tell you, oh yeah, I've had really rough nights. Sure. You know, I mean, I mean, you're gonna have times when you're just like, man, you know, you have a bad day at work. It's just things are just not clicking for some reason. But that doesn't mean that you don't give it your best, at that point. And so that's always kind of been my mindset. So that's one of the things that I've kind of noticed. And like at Eastside, you're right. The production there is so big. Yeah. And it's such a big deal, and there's so many people watching it that you're gonna, you know. Now you touched on this. You talked about playing with tracks and playing with the click and stuff like that. And this will be fun to talk about because I always have a lot of funny stories and hear funny stories. What about playing with tracks, and what about playing with a click? Do you like it? Is there ever a time when you don't play with tracks at the church? Are you always playing with the tracks? Would you rather play with them? Would you rather not? Talk about that.
There is so at Eastside, I play with tracks and
100% of the time.
Yes, 100%. So there's a click, there's cues, and the tracks are there to fill in.
That is so weird too, because you're playing along. You're drumming along and things are going great. You're looking at your transcription, and the backing tracks are just some music that are in your ears, and all of a sudden you hear chorus 2, 3, 4. It's like, whoa!
I remember you mentioned that you didn't know that was going to happen at CR. Is that what it was?
Dude,
and your chorus. I was like, what?
I had no idea. I was like, and I looked around and said, like, who said that?
Who said that? Yes, God.
Exactly. Wow.
Keep the cues coming, Lord.
This church is definitely wired in, man.
That's awesome, man. I remember I heard that story and I just laughed, dude. I was in my studio. I was binging on your podcast, and when you that came up, I laughed out loud, a true LOL. Because I thought, man, I can imagine how that would have thrown you off if you didn't know that was coming.
Dude, I had no idea. And the first time, you know, I'm drumming along and I'm you know, checking my kick drum, making sure the feel's there by swinging it, whatever it was I was trying to do, and all chorus 2, 3, 4. I'm like,
yep. Yeah.
Watch the bouncing ball. So anyway, I'm sorry. I had to put that in there.
That made me. I remember. I'm glad you brought that up because I remember hearing that in your podcast and thinking, yep, that would spook the heck out of someone too, man. So
anyway,
yeah. So you have at Eastside, you have God giving you cues. And then at another church that I play at, Arbor Road Church in Lakewood, we're playing to a click. But that's it. Okay. So the interesting thing there is the chart. You got to read your chart.
Does everybody have the click or just
Yes.
you?
No, everybody does. Okay. Yes. And we have the piano player is an MD. Mm-hmm. And so he sings as well. AJ DeGraw, he's singing, but he also has it right next to him a talkback mic for the band. Oh. So he'll throw some cues out there. It's like, you know, it's almost like a coach, you know. We've run through everything. Everyone's great musicians in that band. So as you well know, the expectation is not that we're going to rehearse, but just, you know, mark up the music if we need to, if there's any changes for the services. So there it's a click, and AJ is throwing vocal cues if we need them, not for everything, but you know, that's what's going on there. Another church that I'm playing at, Trinity United Presbyterian Church in Santa Ana, Tustin, I think the border there. I use the click on my in-ears with my earbuds, iPhone earbuds, just to keep the band where they need to be.
Right.
There's no tracks. There's no big production there.
Just down and dirty.
Down and dirty.
Let's rock.
That's right. And and you'll appreciate that. It's those gigs that remind you of your musicianship.
Yeah.
And when you've got nothing else to lead on,
right?
No lights, no smoke, no cues, nothing.
It's me and a drum.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And they're dependent on you to set them up and to be at the right place at the right time and to kick off the band.
Yep.
So, so they rely on me there. And so on that one, I bring my iPhone and my iPad with my music on there and a little metronome on there and set at rehearsals. We have a midweek rehearsal when I'm playing with them, and I'll just set all the tempos and make sure that they're happy with those tempos. Because sometimes the charts, as you know, charts are marked. Yeah. But then as you start playing with the bands, like, ooh, that feels too slow or too fast. So we'll adjust that stuff. But other than that, I'm the only one with the click there, and no in-ears or anything.
Do you like playing with tracks?
Yeah. Let me put it this way. I would much rather prefer being on a band and knowing that everything was on the stage with the band, knowing that everything was live.
Yeah.
Just for the sheer interaction, knowing that even though everyone's playing the music, stuff can happen playing off of each other. Right. That creativity that everyone's staying in the pockets, not, if it's a R&B thing or a church thing, that those little musicianship parts can come in, you know what I mean? Right. From anyone that's on the stage. So I'd much prefer that. Right. But that's just, so that's that. That's the answer to that question. I would much prefer being on a stage knowing that it's all coming from everyone on the stage, whether it's a trio or quartet or a larger band or whatever. Yeah. But, the cool thing is, that I've gotten comfortable with everything, fortunately. Yeah. I've gotten very comfortable with everything. How about you? I'm curious about you because where are you at?
With playing with tracks?
Yeah, and the tracks, click, all that kind of thing. Because you guys have a solid production also.
Yeah, we do. We don't play to any tracks. Okay. Everything is live, and it takes a lot of people to pull it off. Yes. We have, so there's Sam, there's Carl, our saxophone player, there's Walt, our piano player, there's Greg, the bass player, there's Doreen, and there's myself. Yeah. And we're all, and David, the guitar player. Yeah. and it takes all of us to pull it off. Yeah. And I do play to a click. Yeah. On I would say I play to a click about, well, for the Bob Seger show, for the Turn the Page show, I play everything except for 2 songs to the click. Okay. Or no, now actually 3 songs to the click now because we just added in another song. And we don't play that one to the click simply because Sam wants the time to flow. Yes. He wants it to move. Right. And he wants it solid, but it's more like a rubber band. It has a breath to it. Right.
Right. It's musical.
Yeah, exactly. It's I enjoy playing with the click because the way that I play with it so much that I look at the click as another musician in the band.
Yes, I love that. I didn't think of it that way at first. Yeah. It was my enemy at first when I was still learning.
Of course.
Early on.
The click is telling you where you're playing bad.
Yeah. I'm working with my daughter right now. Yeah. And that's, fortunately, I had that analogy, that mindset many years on now, is that, honey, just treat it as if there's someone next to you and on percussion or something, and that's what they're doing, and just tuck it right in there.
And the click, that I tell my students that the click. Think about, you're playing with like the best musician you've ever played with, and they don't move. They're perfect, and so that's the way I look at it. Right. And I think telling your daughter to do that is phenomenal. Yeah. Because like you said, at first the click is your enemy because I would venture to say, and I tell this to my students all the time, myself included, 90% of the people out there feel the beat faster than it is. That you just do.
Interesting. Yep.
You just do. So for me, the click it keeps me honest, and it's like, and some nights, you walk up there and you're really excited. You walk on stage, at some big concert, and there's 7,000 people out there, and your adrenaline's going, and you're going to want to count off the first song pretty fast. So that click, you're like, okay, that's where the song is. But then there's the opposite. There's nights where you're like, man, I'm tired tonight. Yeah. Well, and so then you're going to drag. Well, now the clicks kick you in the butt. Right, come on, let's get it together. Yeah. So it's a great tool.
I'll tell you this: even if there were no click throughout the tune, I, for the reasons you just said, would not trust myself too much unless I'd been doing a certain set of songs over and over again on some kind of tour or something where it was internalized.
Yep.
For the reasons you said, adrenaline and anything else going on, would want starter clicks.
Oh,
let me hear where it starts off. I'll count the band in, and if we rush or drag after that, that's on me.
Right.
But I would definitely, because as you know, too many of us know, where I've started something without that, and as soon as the singer starts singing, it's like, dang, they're stuck for the next 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Unless, because they're spitting out lyrics right now, and they're hating every minute of it upstage, up there. Unless we start slowly drag it, bring it back down.
Right.
But and you don't want to have to do that.
You can slowly put the brakes on.
Yes,
but you've got to be able to pull that off. You have got to have done it a few times.
You're right, man. I know.
I know this because I've done it before.
So that's why I was like, you know what? Give me Mr. Click to start off. If and that's where if the artist or whoever's up front says, well, we don't want to click, let's just play. Okay, but let me at least make sure we start in the right place,
right,
and then go from there.
And I think again, I always use one of my favorite drummers in the world, and one of the biggest influences on me, on who he is as a person. Is two of my favorite drummers in that regards are Bissonette, and Kenny Aronoff.
Oh wow,
and they, you read some great interviews, and there's some incredible video stuff up on YouTube right now on Kenny Aronoff, and he talks about that because the guy does so many gigs.
Yeah,
he does, and I mean, okay, think about that. You're going to be playing on television for the Beatles' 50th anniversary on Ed Sullivan.
Yeah.
And you're playing with the most legendary people in the business. Yeah. You're a legend in the business. Yeah. And then the next night, you're subbing for Todd Zuckerman on a Styx gig.
Nuts.
Dude, that's heavy.
That's nuts,
And you've got to and he talks about, you're using the click and I think to not do that, it's a mistake.
I agree. Where we're at right now in music, yes, it has to be something, for example, there's a downtown. We're going to be there tomorrow night. There's a trio that a buddy of mine came together. We're going to be playing downtown at Zing's. It's a jazz trio with some Latin stuff. No click involved. You know what I mean? That's a whole nother thing.
Right.
But with where music's at right now, it's click. So anyone who's listening, that's a drummer, particularly that's aspiring to kind of be the bus driver for a band, you just need to get comfortable with that.
Yeah,
the sooner the better.
Yeah,
the sooner the better. That's just part of the duties.
And hope that God counts you into the chorus. Okay, so now this I'm going to take a left turn here because we've been most everything that you do is with the church, and now you have the jazz trio with who's in the band. Tell who's in the band.
On the jazz trio is a friend of mine, Marcus Girakos, a stunning guitar player, and I played with him in a Latin band many moons ago that I had to audition for. Boy, talk about feeling out of sync. It was a band called Escenas, and he was writing all the music, and anything that would happen Latin-wise on the piano, he was covering on guitar. He's stellar. The bass player switched that out. He called me one morning or texted me one day and just said, hey, man, let's get a trio together. This was after many years kind of going our own ways. And so the bass part has been shifting around, but he knows some amazing people. So that's just a lot of jazz standard stuff and some put to Latin style or whatnot.
Cool.
And so that'll be happening at Zing's.
Cool. And when's that?
That's what's today? Friday. Tomorrow night. Yeah,
okay.
7:30 to 10. If anyone local wants to go hang out.
Cool. Yeah. And then so now here's the left turn. Yeah. I talked about the jazz thing, but you do a thing up at 710 Studios in Brea. and talking about studio work. And talk to me about that. It's like an open mic night type of thing, or what is it? What do you guys do there?
It's Studio 770.
Oh, 770.
Yep.
I said
And
710.
it's okay. The tricky thing is it's on 770 Brea Boulevard. Out by
I
the
recorded
Guitar
there
Center.
once.
Did you really?
Yeah, long time ago.
So the studio owner and chief engineer is my friend Shanti Haas.
Yes.
We've known each other for about maybe 15, 16 years. Just a great relationship. I've been very fortunate to always get calls from her when she needs drums or percussion from clients. So that's been a wonderful experience. She's really helped me with the gear to set up my home studio. So I'm really indebted to her knowledge and her willingness to have me in her studio. I met her through Trini many years ago, and so it's been about 3 or 4 years since I've been doing that, and it was started as like once a month of this open mic. Then it's moved to like every quarter to 3 months. Every 3 months of the year. But that has been amazing. That goes back to one of my favorite drummers, Carlos Vega.
Oh,
wow. Yeah, and I remember on a Modern Drummer article, he talked about time being internalized, and he said something, he goes, he really felt that comes with maturity. He felt, I mean, practice with the click and the whole studio thing, legendary for being a studio musician. But I remember his advice was, man, if you can ever get in the situation, first of all, that same advice, play as much as you can with whoever you can.
Right.
Second thing, my focus about being a studio musician, I really was listening to whatever he would say about that. And he said, if by chance, that's when the industry was kind of turning and it was just kind of tough to get into a major studio or whatever, said, if you have a mom and pop studio somewhere around town and you can go in and just cut for them for, not a whole lot, but just cut tracks, get practice, seeing that red light or hearing, okay, we're rolling, that sort of thing, do it. Well, this studio situation, they had started off where for 3 hours, 7 to 10 p.m., usually on a Tuesday night, she has folks, local artists or whoever, come in, and they pay a fee to track with the band. They get like a 15-minute slot. Now, the trick there, it is open mic, so you come in, artist comes in, shows us a chart. Now, the band there, I just have to say this. There's a local piano player around here, Orange County and beyond, Ron Kobayashi.
Yes.
And I had heard about Ron. I remember
Ron's a bad dude.
Well, he will not remember this, but when I was a worship leader many years ago and I was panicking for a keyboard player, his name came up and someone told me, this is Ron Kobayashi. If he can do it, he will. Neat guy, nice guy, but it's Ron, And so I did, and we talked. He was very courteous. He couldn't do it, but I remember that.
Does Baba ever come in and fly?
No, Baba has. I played with Baba a couple times.
Dude, Baba's a
yes, and I've got to see the Ron Kobayashi trio with Steve Dixon on drums.
Oh yeah,
I love watching him play.
Yeah.
And the bass player here at the open mic night is a friend of mine that I met there. It was Sam Montooth. And Sam is amazing. He can, on upright bass, he's stuck in a little closet there playing. He makes his bow work when he needs it. But I remember we did another gig at a little concert at a home, and he took out his bow and did a solo on with the bow on his bass. I thought, Sam, where the heck is that at?
Yeah.
And he said, I'm stuck in that closet. I can't do that. So at the studio, but. They'd been doing it for a couple of years. For whatever reason, the drummer couldn't make it, so Shanti called me. And since then, they've had me with them for these 3 or 4 years now. So here I am after, a couple of near misses of playing with Ron Kobayashi, with him in my most favorite environment, playing with Sam Montooth. So these artists come in, they show us a chart. That's where it gets tricky. These are people that have been in a studio before sometimes, have not, have a couple bucks to spare, and they want to record something. And sometimes it gets as crazy as just chords on top of lyrics, and you don't know how many bars or anything, and they just think that you can do anything, and we try our best. Or a chart 9 pages long, because no one told them
you to
listen
hit every note.
Exactly. Yeah. So on that point, it's
Read
amazing.
like you did in high school, man.
That's right. Yes. Thank you, high school. And so it's 3 hours of every 15 minutes. Someone bringing you a chart, talking it down to you. Saying we'll have a solo here, solo there, we're going to do this, or here's the intro, here's how we're going to end. And it happens that speedy.
Yeah, just bing, bang, boom.
Yes.
Go.
It has been amazing. And Bart, I realize just how much it's been amazing for me because, now just when you hear that, the phrase from, Troy, the engineer, okay, guys, we're rolling whenever you're ready.
Yeah.
Great, we're rolling. Let's just do this.
Let's
you know
do
what I
it.
mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
There's still that respect for the art. Totally.
Yep.
Like, this is someone else's stuff.
Yep.
And I don't know if they're doing this for a little granddaughter's, birthday song or birthday they wrote for their wife, mom, whatever.
Right.
Or someone's slowly but surely coming to these things, compiling their EP.
Right.
So in that sense, what you talked about earlier, when I say yes to that, and again, I'm fortunate to where they don't ask me if I'll come back. They just check, are this dates available?
Yeah.
And so the band, the three of us, once we know we're locked in, then she'll set that date. That's very, I love the fact that someone is willing to, rely on us for that.
Completely.
And, and the band feels great. So they come in every 15 minutes for those 3 hours, and we work through stuff, maybe get some suggestions. As soon as we're done tracking.
Are you, sorry to interrupt, you said you give suggestions. Do you find that some people are open to that? Like, hey, why don't you try this? Or a lot of people like, I want it this way.
Yes.
Or both.
It's both. There's so many different personalities coming in. As a matter of fact, there was a real cool situation where Sam told me of a friend of his that was going to be coming in, a vocalist, and he said, man, bring your cajon. We're going to try this a little bit differently. And so I brought it, and she was open to his suggestion.
Oh, really?
And it worked beautifully.
That's fantastic.
Beautifully. So you get, variety of these folks coming up, and just, again, just comply. If you get a sense, the musical politics of it, if you get a sense that they're open to suggestions, and there's some that are novices, they want them, they're just, oh my God, I didn't think of that. That's going to sound great. And others that they know.
They know what they want.
So we just, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, and go on. So as soon as, if the better prepared they come in with a great chart and they know what to do, they can actually take 2 or 3 passes on their tune. And then once that's done, if they have some flubs, they can always recut their vocals later on.
And does she go through at a later time?
Yes.
And edit and cut and and mix and stuff.
Mix it up later on. So that's where the deal comes, where they can either cut a discounted deal with Shanti and come back and do all that stuff, or buy their mix or buy their tracks and go do it somewhere else.
Oh, okay.
So that's kind of like, of course she's hoping that they'll finish
with
everything with them. That's right. So as soon as we're done cutting with one artist and everything's happy, they go to the control booth, listen back, and we're out in the room talking with the next artist,
with the next person, getting ready to go.
That's right. Yeah,
that's cool.
And it's really, really, really cool. Very challenging.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah, and there's times where it's you find yourself like, I mean, it's always after the tune's done, the first take's like, okay, how's everyone feel? Like, you know what? I need to redo my part. Or there's just a section I need to redo. Everyone is, because we want to make sure that our part is great for them, and they just need to work on their vocals, but they really do need to come away with the solid part from the band, the trio,
from what you guys do for them.
Yes.
And that's, again, it comes back to I think what we've been talking about all day, in some of the stuff is just serving the song, serving the music, serving the artist. One of the, and again, we're talking about your stuff, but I agree with you, just to kind of elaborate on the studio stuff. I've had the incredible opportunity to record, like, God, and I know I'm going to say the wrong number, but I think it's like 9 records with Sam. And original stuff, as well as all the Bob Seger re-records, because
that's awesome.
we got signed to that record label.
Incredible.
And when the first record is good, and I stand behind the first Bob Seger record 100%. It's really good.
Yeah.
But as time went on, we learned that the producer, who was Michael Blum, and Michael Blum worked with Madonna and Pink Floyd, and the guy recorded Michael Jackson.
That's amazing, man.
Oh, dude, talk about and he is really hard on drummers.
Yeah.
And the first record, I didn't like him too much. But I tell you what, man, talk about going through the fire.
Yes.
And he's hired me on a few occasions to come in and record stuff. And dude, this guy has every drummer's name in town, and he doesn't need to call me. So I'm so honored.
It's a good feeling, man.
It is.
There's something you're bringing. Absolutely.
And the charts on the re-records for the Bob Seger, and then I've done a bunch of other re-records, and some of the stuff is so challenging. But I had to do the high school reading thing, because I had to transcribe every note.
Yep.
Then I had to go in and play every note.
Yep.
And this comes back to the musical education thing on that reading thing.
Yeah.
Okay. And that is that you want to be able to do that. You want to, what you're saying with the recording stuff, what you do, you want to be able to walk away and give the musicians they want to walk. You want them to walk away with their finished product.
Yeah.
Exactly perfect.
Yeah.
When I'm cutting my stuff with Michael, I'm recording to a click.
Mm-hmm.
There's not another musician in the room. I'm
That's
reading
tough.
the charts. I've got to create a feel.
Yeah.
And I've got to, if the phrase says, I got to play, I got to nail the part.
Yeah.
And then I'm also the one that's transcribing it.
Yeah.
So the responsibility to be able to do that is big. So on the education side of things, it's kind of what you're saying. Be able to do it all.
Yeah.
Be able to read the chart that's just, okay, here's an 8-bar phrase, and you go into an 8-bar chorus, and you go back into a 4-bar intro, and you double up the second time in the verse, and you can do 16 bars, and understand that stuff.
Right.
But then also understand, okay, you may have to read this because the songwriter or the artist wants this exact phrase.
Yeah.
Be able to do that.
Right.
Give them what they want.
Right.
Give them what they want. Be able to play to a click. Be able to play to backing tracks.
Yeah.
Don't be scared when God tells you the chorus is
That's right. But the other thing too is what you're saying with that, and the necessity of you many times of hitting those exact parts is because the people who will benefit from that production, the audience, will be listening for it.
Right.
And there's just those times where they don't want your creativity; they want to hear what was there.
Right.
And it's as many people say, it's a service industry.
Well, a lot, yeah. And when you're on re-record stuff, and that's kind of a specialized thing, because that's not always what you're going to get. You're going to get more what I think the average musician would get, where it's create something new for the artist and stuff. So the re-record thing is kind of something that's specialized. But I mean, and for people out there listening, you've all been watching a movie and you hear a song come on and you know the song, you've heard it a million times, but then you go, wait a second, that's not the original.
Right.
And that's kind of what that's kind of what I've been called upon to do.
That's rewarding, man.
It is very rewarding, And again, just being able to do it all, I think is so important.
Yeah.
Be able to do those things.
Yeah, and as you well know, that's the one thing. Again, I'm hugely fortunate with the studio situation because it is like a lab, a microscope, and as you well know, it takes that first couple times when you're in the studio when you realize, what's that noise? What's that? Well, let's isolate the snare. Well, you keep doing little ghost notes, and that's a habit, and that's not what we want in the song, but it's a habit. It's like, wow, it picked that up. Live.
Yep.
No problem.
No problem.
No one hears that, but it became really real. That's one of the best things that I love about it. It really puts a microscope to your playing,
right?
To where things that aren't, certain habits that aren't fitting for a song or they don't want on a song, little things, like I said, if I'm letting my snare, like I've had this habit sometimes on a side stick, I'll be playing side stick, and my fingers, I'll just roll on the snare.
Right, yeah.
And the first time I heard that, it's like, I do that, and it's like, what is that? And I knew what it was.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like, that's what I'm doing. And they realized, let's just have a clean side stick on that.
Yeah.
And boy, talk about initially overthinking, like, okay, now I can't do that, and your fingers are just moving in your head, man. Like, don't touch the snare.
You know what? There's two things with Blum. Okay, so the first thing I really learned was with Blum was I was flamming sometimes between my snare drum and my hi hat. Like, okay, don't do that. Don't play the hi-hat in the session, I mean, you don't just keep your foot, tap your heel, just don't flam. So, and because again, the microscope thing that you said, complete microscope thing. And then the other thing, because the way that I'm tracking, and and this is so dumb, I practice this. When I go in and I track, again, it's so raw because there's no mic bleed on anything. There's no other musicians. It's just
incredible.
the drums.
That's tough. I just want to be clear right now, because the second time you mentioned, that's just tough.
It's
to
really
do.
tough. It's really tough.
So
and
props, man. That's incredible.
Well, thanks. But I'll sit in here and I'll practice, and you don't realize, but you're in there playing.
Yeah.
You're reading down your chart, and all of a sudden.
That's right.
All these noises are picked up by the microphone, and you're there snorting and coughing and sniffing and coughing.
That's the truth.
So I will literally, and it freaks me out a little bit when, like, if I'm going in for a session and I have a chart already, and I'm like, okay, I got to go and I got to cut this. I'll sit in here and I'll practice, and I'm like, whatever you do, breathe quietly through your nose.
Oh gosh,
True story.
I'm sure. Yes, I know. On some of the tracking at my place, it's happened with me when I have a condenser mic on my my chimes or something.
Yeah.
And the first couple times where I realized that, it's like, you can't breathe right now, man, for the next 5 minutes. And the other thing has been spooky. There's been a couple times where I go back to listen to playback on my drums of the recording. It's late at night.
Yeah.
And then I hit play, and then you hear this rustling and movies like, I just like panic and turn around at my door. It's like, dude, that's you sitting down at the kit, getting adjusted while the 8 clicks go by before start.
Right.
It's these little things that you just don't realize till you're there doing it, on your own.
And the funny thing is like, and here, this is a whole nother subject for another podcast, but I've said that a couple times today. But the thing with like some of the old recordings, like you listen to some of the Bonham stuff, and like, because there's those raw tracks and everything out there, Bonham in the session, you hear that, they didn't, that was part of the soup, and it definitely got mixed in.
Right.
Well, listen, Isaac, here's what we could sit here all day. Believe it or not, I just looked at my computer, and we are an hour and 20 minutes in.
It felt like 5 minutes.
I know. And so this is going to be the longest podcast. People will get into 10 minutes and they're going to be like, no, it doesn't matter. No. You know what I might do is I might listen, when I listen to it, I might find a point and split it in half.
Yeah.
Yes, we could
that'd be great too, man.
But this has been awesome, and I thank you so much for coming over. Let's get together and record and do all that sort of fun stuff. We will
do that. I just want to say one more thing, and this is just about you, in terms of that came up with Justin, again, our mutual friend or whatnot. And I remember him just saying, Bart's just one of those guys that he's just happy to give and teach and give, and how can I help kind of thing, and always about the other person. And you've just been that. And listen, I am totally pleased and humbled that you had asked me, and that you didn't just ask, and I, because like, man, Bart asked me about the podcast, to be on the podcast. I know we've worked hard to try to make this happen. But the fact that you followed up, when it looked like it could happen for you, hey man, what are you doing, Isaac? Can we make this happen? And we made it work finally. But the fact that because I have great and high respect for you, educator,
thank you,
drummer,
so
what you're doing, your hustle and everything. That I'm glad that this has been a conversation where I get to hear from you. I look forward to listening back again to hear what you say, man.
Oh, dude,
about your experiences. And
this is awesome.
I appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate
really
it, buddy.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Well, listen, that was Isaac. If you check him out, where can they watch you play? Like on the web, like on the services.
Yeah,
and stuff,
I have a YouTube channel. If they go to Isaac Sanchez, search me up on Isaac Sanchez on YouTube. And then my website is Isaac ISAAC Sanchez SANCHEZ.com. I had to put a dash there because some motorcyclist or someone else had that domain. So don't forget the dash in there. And there's some that's my website, and I'm still working on some stuff there. But I appreciate you asking.
Oh, you bet.
Can look me up there, and all my contact stuff is there.
Awesome. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. And hopefully you made it through the full hour and 20 minutes. I'm going to, I'll probably cut it in half and do 2 and 2. But this has been great. Yeah. And I will see you guys in the next episode of The Bart Factor.